An interview with like Sarah Paulson and her sister.
No, I didn't know she had a sister.
I don't think anybody does. But yeah, like her sister was a correspondent for some gay news source. And it was really funny. I don't know. I think it's a funny interview because they're sisters. So it's just like
Hmm.
she's like, "Okay, sister, let me just." So now I feel like this is probably the same thing. It feels kind of weird.
Oh,
Uh,
like her sister was interviewing her.
yeah, her sister was like the correspondent for the news source.
Oh, that's so
Yeah, it
funny.
was
Yeah,
really
that's pretty
weird.
much what's
I mean, it
happening
was
right
funny. It
now.
wasn't weird. It was a good interview. It was just like, okay, you're siblings though. So go ahead and start. Tell me who you are. Tell me your pronouns um, and we'll start with how did you first get into tattooing?
Okay, so I'm Soul, 24 in like 3 months, and my pronouns are she, her. Um,
So you're 23?
I'm
Is the
23.
accurate is the accurate age?
23.71.
Well, there you go.
um, Jake and I Googled how many days we've been alive, and because we're born on the same day, the decimal after our birth is the same. So he's 26.71 and I'm 23.71. Anyways, I thought that was cool. But
That's
so
cool.
yeah, I'm not on any social, so you couldn't really find me anywhere unless you went to my website, which is soulsmalls.com, and that's where you can see my portfolio and get in touch with me if anyone wanted to contact me. That's how.
The plug goes on the end, and I asked you, how did you get into tattooing?
Oh, no, plug goes in the front, so anyone who doesn't watch till the end gets the plug.
Okay. Oh, true. That's fair. Continue though.
Okay, so that's me. What else did you ask?
How did you get into tattooing?
How did I get into tattooing? So I
Mhm.
had a friend who was interested in this girl and he wanted to have a double date with me and my boyfriend at the time. So we met up with them and she was super cool. She was a tattoo artist and I didn't really know anything about tattooing. I was fresh out of high school. I had this hobby of like drawing on myself with Sharpie and pen, not really knowing that I was kind of imitating tattoos in that way. But I really liked having like pictures on myself and on my skin at that time. And she had a lot of tattoos. So I was like, I was really interested. I didn't have any tattoos. I maybe had like one or two at that time. So she kind of got me interested. I asked about how to become a tattoo artist. She told me about the apprenticeship opportunities. And then I got an apprenticeship at her shop, and this was in South Florida. And that's how I started.
Yeah, and you have the unique experience of getting into tattooing from another woman, right? And you've described to me that one of the biggest issues you found in the industry is misogyny. So, talk to me a little bit about your experience with misogyny. We can break it down into different aspects. So, let's break it down to misogyny in maybe the shops you've worked.
Yeah. So when I started out, excuse me, as an apprentice, I was under a woman and she was from Brazil. And she was kind of predatory in the financial way. She had me sign a contract when I was underage saying that in the beginning, for the first year of my career, I would make 10% commission, regardless of what I was doing, tattooing or piercing.
Were you
So I
underage? I
was
thought you were 18 at the time.
no, I was 17 when I signed that contract. And that's why when I later left, because there was a lot of things going on, like verbal abuse, she was instigating fights with neighboring shops and police were called and they kind of gave me the option to get out when I could, and I did. And I'm really
Mhm,
glad I did.
mhm,
Um, she was pretty misogynistic, had some internalized misogyny. I think everyone does that lives in this country. And
mhm,
there were some things I wasn't allowed to wear because I wore very risque clothing at this time. I still kind of do, just kind of put
mhm,
on whatever I feel like wearing. So her husband would kind of give me double looks and she would pull me aside and say, don't wear those shorts, when he's here, or you have to put a jacket on, just stuff like that. Um, but on the other side of it, she was sometimes, especially when her husband wasn't around, she was really supportive of me dressing provocatively because it helped me get walk ins and it helped me get more clientele.
mhm.
And that was like I'm of two minds about that, but that was kind of my experience early on. And then later it started to affect where I could work because there were a lot of shops that wouldn't hire women, especially young women, people who maybe had a rough apprenticeship and were trying to break into their career, regardless of skill or talent. If you were young and female, you were just not hired. Um, And that was like my struggle mostly. I went to a shop once, and this was in South Florida, and it was my first day working at that shop. And the manager, who didn't hire me, the owner of the shop hired me, and I had just met the manager. He wore a shirt that said, "Women belong in the kitchen, not in the shop." And he was extremely rude and terrible to me for the 2 weeks that I worked there. They fired me, but I was quitting that same day because it was just so terrible. It was like I couldn't really do anything without getting shit for being a girl. None of my clients wanted to come to the shop because it was such a hostile environment. I used to use metal tubes, which is the part that you insert into the machine, and that's where the needle comes through. And they're metal, so you have to put them in the autoclave to be sterilized. And at the time, I didn't own any because I had used my mentors at the time. So when I came to this new shop, I only had plastic tubes. And when I came, he was like, "Oh, we're very traditional here. We only use metal, and you have to clean them." And I was like, "I don't have any metal. Can I borrow whatever the shop has here?" And he was like, "Oh, look at this girl coming in here already stealing our shit and taking our stuff and needing everything from us. God, like we shouldn't be hiring girls." Like just, it was just so terrible. It was awful.
Mhm.
And I think that was my first experience leaving my apprenticeship. Was that the
So
first shop yeah.
that was a job, that wasn't an apprenticeship, that was, like, your first tattoo gig, I
Hmm.
see.
Yeah,
Um,
that was the first one that I was independent.
from there, I guess you've worked at a couple different shops, so if you wanna speak to any other experiences that you've had in other shops, because it sounds like it's not, like, it wasn't just localized to one space.
Yeah. So I ended up going to a different shop and I worked there for about a year and a half, and it was wonderful. I had a great time. I had ups and downs with the people that I was working around and working with, mostly men. Tons of misogyny. Or actually, this is the second shop I worked at. My second manager was a trans man. So it was hard for me to be like constantly being shit on for being a woman in the industry, but then coming into this new shop and my boss is transgender and seeing how everyone around us that worked with us, even the owner, the way that they interacted with him was really heartbreaking and terrible. There's definitely lack of space for transgender people in this industry, I would say. Um,
Well, can you
Tons of
elaborate on that?
people.
How did people can you elaborate onto how people treated this
Yeah.
person? 'Cause yeah.
Yeah. So the other artists at the shop would use she, her pronouns with him, and clients would use she, her pronouns with him. I mean, I think it was because he had a higher voice and he wasn't assertive about, "Hey, I'm male, these are my pronouns." He was very like, and something I noticed a lot from like the South, transgender people that I've met that are in from Southern states, they kind of don't want to instigate. They'd rather just like keep the relationship so they can have that client another day and keep
Oh, well,
working.
yeah. Yeah, that's like business and then, like,
Hmm.
people are I feel like it's more dangerous. Like,
Yeah,
people
and
have
I could see it took a toll on him.
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So, a lot of that, and then coming to California, I had this one instance where I was working at a private shop. This man owned his own shop, and I came in and I was working with him, and I had my own clientele, and he was a really supportive, wonderful person. I adore him. And he had a client come in, this like big macho bro guy, and he came in and he handed me his ID, and he was like, "Oh, go fill out the paperwork for me, thanks, doll." Like, didn't ask who I was or what I was doing there. He just kind of assumed a young person in the shop this early with the boss is the apprentice, is just the caddy, like the office girl. He didn't really assume that I was of my own independent, working there, making my own money. I wasn't, filling out forms for this guy, but I did it. I didn't say anything to him. I just filled out the forms and gave them to him, and I moved on because it's so much easier than, you know, causing tension or possibly deteriorating the relationship between that client and that tattoo artist. You'd rather just like move on, keep your head down, and
Yeah,
look
so
the
what I'm
other
hearing
way.
yeah, like, what I'm hearing is, that you were never taken seriously by many folks, and, it's compounded with the fact that excuse me, in business, there's this, saying of, like, "The customer is always right," so it kind of and, there was a writer that we have that wrote about this, but it kind of feels like that saying, "The customer is always right," really is saying the customer can treat you like trash,
Yeah.
and that's it because they're a customer, period.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Right. In the beginning, I was like empowered. I felt motivated because I was in an all women shop in the beginning as my apprenticeship. I was an apprentice, and my good friend was also an apprentice. The girl that introduced me into tattooing at the time was an apprentice. I think she had been tattooing for about 3 months when I had met her, but under an apprenticeship, she was tattooing. So it was like half off or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so at first, I was really empowered because I had this best friend and I had this mentor, and it was like all good, all women and everything. I was getting tattooed by mostly women and some men. And then it just got worse and worse as I was kind of initiated into what I'm supposed to be thinking and doing as a female tattoo artist and how competitive it is. And it got more and more hostile. Like it was a lot about like tearing the women around us locally who were tattoo artists down, like, oh, they suck, they're terrible. Come to me, come to us, come to our shop because we're better. It was just like really catty and terrible. And a lot of it was propped up on the industry's traditional values. Like, if you don't finish your apprenticeship, you're a piece of shit. You got to start all over. You're terrible. You probably suck. If you're a woman who dresses like promiscuously and tattoos your clients, you are, basically a prostitute and you're just selling your body, not your tattoos. And only people come to you to see your body. That's how it was portrayed. And other women in the industry would like dog on you for that. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was terrible. And just every female, every woman that I knew who was a tattoo artist had some sort of terrible past with mentors being extremely misogynistic, clients, and they had to bounce around way more than the men that I knew. A lot of men that I knew who were tattoo artists stayed at the same shop for 5, 10 years, and the women had to keep jumping to avoid these shitty traditionalist people who were like gonna treat them like shit every single day.
Were clientele any different when it came to um, amounts of misogyny in any parts of the process?
They were more encouraging, but didn't really know what to say. It's kind of like when I heard this plus size model talk about walking into her first runway and everybody coming up to her and saying, I'm so glad you're here. Oh, it's so good to see new people. It's like you're not really doing what you think you're doing. You're kind of just like making that person feel extremely isolated by putting them on this pedestal because they're there, even though they deserve to be there regardless. And that's kind
Mhm.
of how I felt. My clients would come in and they would say all the right things, but it was more so like, oh, it's so cool that you're a tattoo artist and you're a girl. That's so interesting. Like, you must get all the boys. It was just like coming from the wrong place. It was encouraging, but not in the way that I wanted to be supported, I guess. And women were way better. Women were like, I'd rather be tattooed by a girl because they felt like they were going to be listened to and they
Mm.
were going to have their opinion taken into account. A lot of male tattoo artists, when they get a female client, they just kind of change their idea around, oh, that's too small, that's never going to work, that's too basic. But when you go to a female artist, they're receptive and they do what you want because you're a person who's giving your opinion. You're not just like, you're not some
Right.
stupid girl.
What is it like being a woman with tattoos walking around? And not just tattoos like, a small, arm tattoo or something, on their shoulder, but somebody who's generally covered from head to toe.
Hmm.
What is that experience like?
It's the first thing men will say to hit on you. Oh, sweet tats, girl. Sweet tats. Where do you get your tats? It's
What are you
like, can you
doing?
please? It's like they want you to like tell them where you go to get tattooed, but like why? Like why is that? I don't know. So when I got my chest piece, that was what people would say, like, "Oh, I like your chest piece," and it made me feel really uncomfortable because I felt like everyone in the room was staring at my chest. And then I got hand tattoos, and it switched, and then people were always commenting on my hand tattoos wherever I went. Oh, like your hand tats, and it was less of like trying to sexualize me, and more of just like, oh, you're covered in tattoos. I have to say something about it because we're in public and you're a
So
stranger.
then
I don't know.
you're saying that where you got your tattoos is where you found the most sexualization?
Yeah, it was like, oh, where else are you tattooed? Show me your tats. And it was like, oh, I've got some on my arms or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, do you have any on your stomach? Do you have any on your back? It's like, I'm not going to show you my body because you're asking me to. Like,
Yeah.
when could you do that to anybody else who's a stranger? It's just so uncomfortable. Like, oh, you got a mole on your face? Do you have one on your back? Do you have a mole on your butt? It's like, sorry,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, I hear you. Do you feel that people, other than sexualizing you at bars or wherever else you get, I suppose anywhere, um, do you ever get the opposite reaction, a negative reaction? Well, that is a negative reaction, but like in their mind, it's negative.
Yeah, like dirty looks or since I work in senior care, I've been working in senior care for 7 years, mostly part time. And seniors will, they don't have a filter, especially the ones that have Alzheimer's, dementia, or traumatic brain injuries. They'll just say what they're thinking. And oftentimes it's not very nice if you're covered in tattoos. So they'll say things like, "Oh, I can't believe you do that to your body. Oh, like you've ruined yourself." And those things used to get to me, but now like it's really, it doesn't bother me at all because I know that that's where they're coming from their generation. And once I start caring for them and they know who I am as a person, they're way less like mean because they know
Yeah.
I'm not just like coming in to like steal their shit and leave, you know?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So I took a break because the pandemic shut down the shops out here for several months, and I had to like, lean on other sources of income. So I started doing Patreon and sex work, and I was having such a blast with that. And it was like kind of a I had to face the misogyny in a different way because now I'm a tattoo artist and a sex worker, which definitely heightens um, my sex appeal, I guess. So clients would kind of either feel uncomfortable coming to me at that point, or they felt like, oh, what a slut. I have to block her. Like, I can't have someone tattooing me that posts nudes or whatever, you know? Yeah, there's nowhere in my life that being covered in tattoos doesn't change my experience, especially being a woman, because there's just expectations of who I am supposed to be. And there's an assumption of being unprofessional or stupid or unmotivated or lazy. I think a lot of teachers, they don't say it directly, it's just how they talk to me, I guess. And then later when they see like I'm achieving and I'm dead serious about getting this degree, I think it kind of takes them by surprise a little bit, honestly.
Mhm.
It's just the responses. It's hard to describe. It's not like direct, like, oh, it's not like they're being directly mean to me or discriminatory, but you can tell in the responses and the way that they interact with other students. It's just different. And I'm not too worried about when I end up in a career in this degree. My degree is microbiology, because it's behind the scenes, it's in a lab. Um, what really matters is what your boss thinks of your work. And if my work is good and I'm, getting proper results and documenting and all that, I don't think what I look like really matters. If you have the brains and the ambition, it doesn't matter how many tattoos you have. That guy really inspired me. I wish I could call his name right now.
No, I was gonna cover that in the blog. I was gonna talk about professionalism and tattoos and how it's possible. But I do wanna say that that person, again, is a man. And it's like, would they
Yeah.
put a woman on the cover? It's already hard enough for a woman in sciences and STEM to get recognition. But if a
Mhm.
woman with tattoos is the face of like a Mars project, I don't know. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it go that far.
That's
Um,
my goal. I wanna be doing Dr. Fauci's job, but as a tattooed female. Like, I want people to be paying attention to scientists that look like modern people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair. I would never want Fauci's job, I'll say. I wouldn't want to deal with any of that politics. It seems
He
more
inspires
political
me.
than scientific.
I just hope that this doesn't discourage women from getting into the industry because it's hard. I think that if you find the right spot, really, like, invest in finding the proper apprenticeship and you will be happy.
Mm,
And you'll be taught by someone that you look up to. And when
mhm.
you're feeling unsafe and you're feeling like you got to get out of there before something happens. Don't wait for something awful to happen and then leave. If you're feeling unsafe, leave the situation because you don't deserve to be in an environment working where you feel unsafe. It's just nobody deserves that.
Yeah,
Regardless of what you're getting from the apprenticeship, you can find another apprenticeship or crazy idea. You can just fucking do whatever the fuck you want. You don't have to follow the fucking rules of the industry. If you want to tattoo out of your house and you have the legal means to do so, do it.
great. Thank you for meeting with me. I appreciate you taking this time. Um, if you want to do a last plug, people can find you at your website, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do illustrations, logo, branding. I love doing D&D characters if you want me to draw that. Um, yeah, so that's soulsmalls.com. I also have a tattoo portfolio, although I'm not tattooing right now, but if you do want to see that, that's where you can find it. I don't think I'll ever work in a shop again. I'm either going to own my own private studio or just tattoo, on the side out of my house in a safe, sterile environment where I
Did you
can
just try
have
to
my stuff.
slyly say something through like a publicly posted video? Hey,
Yeah,
no,
but it's
it's
fine. You
crazy
don't know where I
that
live.
we're publicly posting this. Okay.
My hiatus will definitely be over at some point when I finish my degree. And it will be friends and family that I tattoo, close, people that are close to me that I want to share that experience with. It's a much more sacred thing to me at this point, and it's not, I don't want to do it as a commercial means of making a living anymore. Love you.